The storm raged violently outside, winds howling as the snow came down in blinding sheets. Max, a German shepherd, was tethered to a rusty pole, his body trembling violently against the bitter cold. His breath formed white clouds in the freezing air, each exhale a desperate cry for warmth, a cry that would go unheard in the vast desolation. His wide, terrified eyes darted from the flickering shadows in the distance to the fast-approaching storm, but nothing and no one was coming. His paws were numb, his fur wet and heavy with snow, but still he pulled against the tight rope that bound him. He had been forgotten here, alone in the cold, waiting for a savior that never came. Behind Max stood the abandoned house, its dark windows like hollow eyes, watching the storm rage. The door creaked slightly, moving with the wind, but no one entered, and no one would. It was a place of neglect, its very walls echoing the emptiness Max had been enduring. The house, like Max, had been forsaken, left to decay in the snow. There were no signs of life here, only shadows of the past and the relentless, swirling snow. Through the thickening snow, Emma trudged slowly, her steps heavy, each one sinking deeper into the whiteness beneath her. The breakup had left her emotionally drained, and now the storm mirrored the turmoil inside her. She had left everything behind, her partner, her friends, and the apartment they once shared, to walk the streets, searching for solace or at least a moment of peace. She wanted nothing more than to feel connected again, to find something that could heal her fractured heart. The whimpering sound cut through the howling wind, faint at first, but unmistakable. It was the sound of distress, and it stopped Emma in her tracks. Her eyes swept the street, and there, in front of an old house, she saw him. A dog, trembling violently, his body curled up on the cold ground. His plaintive cries pierced the air. She approached him cautiously, the sight pulling at her heart. His fur, matted with ice and snow, looked like it had been neglected for days. And his eyes, those eyes were filled with something Emma knew all too well. Fear. The kind of fear that settled deep inside her chest. The kind that she had been feeling for weeks, ever since everything had fallen apart. Emma stopped a few feet away from Max, her hand hovering uncertainty in the air. She felt her heart lurch in sympathy, but she also felt a pang of doubt. Could she help him? Would she even be able to? Her own emotional reserves felt depleted, like she had nothing left to give. She had spent so long shutting people and feelings out of her life. She couldn't even fix her own heart, let alone save this dog. And yet, here he was, desperately needing someone to step in, just as she had once needed someone. The conflict swirled within her. Could she take on the responsibility of an animal, of someone so vulnerable? Was she capable of nurturing anything, let alone a creature as fragile as this dog seemed to be? Emma felt torn, caught between her own emotional scars and the undeniable pull of compassion. This was a decision she didn't know if she was ready to make. But the sound of Max's desperate whimpers broke through her hesitation, and she knew she couldn't walk away. Max's eyes met Emma's, and in that moment everything changed. His fearful gaze seemed to penetrate the very core of her. There was a depth of suffering in those eyes that she understood all too well. Pain, abandonment, loneliness. It was the same look she had worn since her relationship fell apart, and it struck Emma harder than any storm. She felt an overwhelming wave of emotion flood over her as she looked at the dog, standing so vulnerably before her. His gaze was pleading, as if begging for her to do something, anything to save him from the cold that had begun to seep into his very bones. In that brief moment, Emma felt a shift inside her, a realization that this wasn't just about saving Max. It was about her. This was her chance to heal, to face the deep wounds that had been festering for far too long. Something in her soul recognized this as the beginning of a transformative journey, one that she never could have anticipated, but was more than ready for. For years, Emma had kept her heart locked away. She had built walls to protect herself from the pain, from the vulnerability that came with loving and being loved. But Max's desperate eyes shattered those walls piece by piece. He was not just a dog. He was a mirror of her own brokenness, of the part of her that she had buried deep inside. And in seeing him, she realized she could no longer hide from herself. This encounter, though seemingly simple, would be the first of many steps toward opening up again, toward finding the courage to let love in. Emma didn't know it yet, but her healing had just begun. The decision she was about to make would change her life, and Max's in ways neither could have imagined. Emma's boots crunched softly against the snow, the biting wind carrying a chill that seeped deep into her bones. She pulled her coat tighter, her breath coming in visible puffs in the cold, as her eyes darted from the shadows of the street to the empty abandoned house on the corner. Her gaze was drawn to the figure tied near the decaying porch, barely visible under the storm's fierce gusts. The air seemed to thicken as her footsteps slowed. Her heart raced, and each step felt heavier, as though her body was instinctively holding her back. Was it a trap, or some wild, scared animal in distress? Emma's pulse quickened. Every warning instinct she'd learned throughout her life told her to be cautious. It was a calculated risk. Could she trust this unknown dog, or would it lash out in fear? But there was something pulling at her, a soft tug in her chest that told her to go forward, to investigate. Max's silhouette became clearer. The weather had frozen his fur stiff, his tail tucked between his legs as he trembled against the cold. Her steps slowed even more, her hand instinctively tightening around the strap of her bag. Was she ready for this? She stopped just a few feet away, her breath shallow as she locked eyes with the dog. His gaze struck her like a thunderbolt. Max's eyes, wide and filled with both terror and desperate hope, told her everything she needed to know. There was a silent plea in his gaze, one that spoke louder than words ever could. It was as if he were asking her, begging her to save him from the cold, from the helplessness, from the chains that held him against his will. Max let out a low whimper, his body trembling violently as he strained against the rope that bound him. His muscles stiffened with the effort, but he couldn't break free. His eyes stayed locked on hers, waiting, pleading, trusting. Emma's heart caught in her throat, a wave of emotion crashing over her. She could see the fear in his eyes, the pain in his movements. The rawness of his vulnerability mirrored something deep inside her, something she hadn't been able to acknowledge. She swallowed hard. She couldn't ignore him now. Emma's gaze shifted to the house behind Max. The windows were dark, the door slightly ajar, and a long, forgotten silence hung over it. There was no sign of life. No one was coming for Max. No one would help him. The streets around them were empty, save for the heavy snowflakes that fell in thick blankets, muffling the world around her. In that moment, a heavy loneliness seemed to settle over her. She knew that feeling, of being forgotten, abandoned, isolated. It wasn't just Max who was alone. She, too, had known loneliness in her own life. This abandoned house felt like a reflection of her soul. Empty, closed off, untouched. The image of Max, small and vulnerable in front of the dark house, struck her deeply. She couldn't leave him here, not in this cold, not in this emptiness. He needed help. He needed her. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Emma realized, perhaps she needed him too. Emma stood frozen, her hands trembling as she stretched them toward Max, her heart filled with a wave of conflicting emotions. She wanted to help him. She could see how desperate he was, how much he needed her. Yet a knot tightened in her chest. Was she really ready for this, to take on the responsibility? The memory of her past flashed before her eyes, the failed relationships, the walls she'd built to keep people at a distance. She had never allowed herself to be vulnerable, to give someone or something the chance to depend on her. Could she open herself up like this? Was she strong enough to be what Max needed? Her fingers wavered in the air, just inches away from Max's trembling form before she pulled back. Her heart said yes, but her mind echoed with doubts. What if this was too much? What if she couldn't follow through? Could she really take on the responsibility of another living being, let alone an animal that was in such pain? Emma's breath became shallow as her mind churned, drowning her in self-doubt. Her past experiences of failure had left scars. She could still feel the sting of betrayal, the fear that had made her close off, and lock herself in emotional cages. Letting someone or something into her life had always felt like an overwhelming risk. But here, in front of her, was Max, vulnerable, broken, and helpless. He didn't ask for anything more than kindness, and here she stood, paralyzed by her own fears, knowing that turning away would make her no better than those who had abandoned him. The internal battle raged. Could she really open herself up again? Could she let herself be the one who helped? Or would she walk away, leaving him just as alone as she had felt for so long? Her mind screamed at her to leave, to protect herself from further pain, but her heart, the part of her that had been silent for so long, was speaking louder now. She realized that helping Max wasn't just about him, it was about her too. She could heal, she could grow if she let herself. In that moment of hesitation, something shifted inside Emma. The self-doubt, the fear, the walls she'd built around her heart, they all began to crumble, piece by piece. It wasn't an instant change, but a gradual realization that she couldn't leave him. She couldn't leave Max in the snow, shivering and alone, just as she couldn't continue to live in the emotional cage she had built for herself. Her heart surged with clarity. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and then, without another thought, reached out. Max's trembling form seemed to grow still as he felt her touch, and for a moment the world around them faded away. It was just her, just him, and the decision to step forward. She wasn't sure what would come next, but she knew one thing: this was the beginning of something transformative. Max had already shown her a glimpse of what it meant to trust again. She wasn't just saving him from the cold, she was saving herself from the walls that had held her back for so long. Together, they would face the storm and whatever else life threw at them. Emma stood before Max, her eyes fixed on the tight rope binding his legs. The knot was stubborn, like the weight of the decision she faced. Her heart thudded in her chest as she hesitated. The rope was cruel, digging into his fur, and his exhausted, shivering body made her stomach churn. She knew the risks. What if he reacted violently? What if he saw her as a threat instead of a savior? But then his tail flicked. It was weak, just a slight twitch, but it spoke volumes, a flicker of hope in the midst of fear. His eyes, wide and uncertain, watched her every move. Emma exhaled slowly, calming her own nerves. Her hand trembled as she reached for the rope. She murmured soothing words, though she wasn't sure he would understand. "I'm not here to hurt you, Max. I just want to help." The knot was harder than it looked. She worked slowly, pulling the strands apart one by one, careful not to tug too hard. Max's body tensed, but he didn't pull away. His eyes never left hers, and for the first time he didn't growl or try to retreat. His body, once stiff with fear, began to relax just slightly. She loosened the final knot, and as the rope fell away, his tail wagged again, this time with more certainty. Emma let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She reached out cautiously, offering him the hand that had freed him, but he hesitated. Emma stayed still, speaking softly. "You're free now, Max. You're safe." Max's eyes darted back and forth, scanning her every movement. There was still a shadow of fear in his gaze, but something had shifted. He stepped forward, inching closer to her outstretched hand. Emma held her breath. She didn't want to scare him away, so she stayed still, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's okay. You can come closer." The air between them felt thick with uncertainty. Yet Emma sensed something in his posture, a flicker of curiosity mingling with the fear. Max sniffed the air, his nose twitching as if debating whether or not to trust her. For what seemed like an eternity, he stood just out of reach. But then, without warning, he took a tentative step closer, then another. Emma's heart soared. This was the moment, the first sign of trust. He nuzzled her hand gently, his fur rough under her fingers, but it wasn't the roughness that mattered. It was the trust. His eyes softened, though his body still trembled slightly. He had allowed her to get closer without retreating. Emma smiled through the tears she didn't even realize were forming in her eyes. "Good boy, Max," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're doing great." As Max looked up at her, his eyes full of questions, Emma knelt beside him. Her voice was low and tender as she spoke. "You're safe now. No one will hurt you again." Her words were simple, yet they held so much weight. She wasn't just speaking to him, but also to herself. The pain in Max's eyes was a reminder of her own struggles, her own battles with trust and fear. And in that moment she realized how much she needed him too. Max didn't fully understand, but he nuzzled her hand again, the motion tender and slow, almost like a gesture of thanks. She could see it in his eyes, the slight flicker of hope, the faintest glimmer of belief in her words. His trust wouldn't come easily, but she had made a promise to herself. She would do everything in her power to keep him safe, to help him heal. Emma brushed a tear from her cheek as she stroked his fur gently. "I won't leave you, not now, not ever," she promised him. He didn't bark, didn't wag his tail, but he remained by her side, comforted by her presence, slowly, surely, starting to trust again. In the days that followed, Emma's care for Max became a series of small, quiet acts. She woke early to bring him food, and though he had initially been wary of her hand, he had started eating from her bowl without hesitation. Each day, she brought him blankets to keep him warm, never pushing him too hard, but always present. There were moments when she simply sat beside him, offering a comforting presence as he napped or gazed out the window, watching the world pass by. At night, she would sit with him on the floor, letting him rest his head in her lap, gently stroking his fur as he fell asleep. It was during these moments of stillness that their bond deepened, when words were unnecessary and the silence spoke volumes. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma slowly opened the door to her home, offering Max a chance to enter. His tail twitched uncertainty, but after a long pause he took a step inside. The space was quiet, unfamiliar, but it was warm. Max hesitated, but then settled down in the corner, lying on the blanket she'd placed for him. Emma sat beside him, and as they shared the quiet, the distance between them seemed to vanish. Though Emma had made progress, she could still see the scars of Max's past in the way he reacted to sudden movements. His body flinched when Emma reached for something too quickly, or when a loud noise startled him. His eyes would grow distant, and for a brief moment the warmth of their bond would flicker out, replaced by the shadows of fear. Emma's heart broke every time she saw it. She would speak to him softly, reassuring him that he was safe, but there were times when even the gentlest touch couldn't calm the storm brewing within him. Max had suffered, and the emotional scars were just as real as the physical ones. Still, she didn't give up. She understood that healing took time, more time than she had initially thought. She could see the progress, even if it was small. When he started eating more readily from her hand, when he allowed her to hold his paw without jerking away, Emma knew that their bond was growing. It was just a matter of patience, of letting him heal at his own pace. Emma often found herself questioning her ability to help Max, her doubts creeping in when progress felt slow. She wondered if she was doing enough, if her presence alone could heal the deep wounds Max carried. There were moments when she feared that she wasn't equipped to care for him, that the damage was too much, too deep. But each small victory, Max's wagging tail when she returned home, his calm when she held him close, the quiet way he followed her from room to room, reminded her that the effort was worth it. Slowly, she came to realize that the bond between them wasn't about fixing him. It was about being there for him, showing him love, patience, and understanding. She began to understand that healing wasn't just Max's journey. It was hers as well. She had to learn patience, to trust that things would unfold in their own time. The doubts that once clouded her heart were slowly replaced with a deeper sense of purpose. She couldn't give up on him, not when every day brought them closer, not when every moment reaffirmed their bond. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the world felt suspended in time. Emma had just settled on the couch, a warm cup of tea in hand, when a sharp, insistent knock echoed through the house. Her body stiffened, the hairs on the back of her neck standing tall. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her pulse quickened as she cautiously approached the door, her thoughts racing. She opened it, and there, standing in front of her, was a man she didn't recognize. But Max did. The stranger's face was twisted in anger, his jaw clenched and eyes blazing. "You have my dog," he growled, voice thick with fury. Emma stepped back, the weight of his words sinking in like ice. Her stomach churned. Max, lying quietly by the fireplace, had perked up at the sound of the man's voice, his tail tucked under, eyes wide with fear. The atmosphere in the room shifted, thick with tension. "I want him back," the man continued, stepping forward, his gaze never leaving Max. "He's mine, and you've no right to keep him." The threat hung in the air like a storm about to break. Max's body trembled, his instinct to flee already setting in. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she watched him shrink away, the fear that had once been buried beneath layers of progress coming to the surface. Max's response was immediate. The dog, who had once been a shaking mess when she first found him now, stood in the corner, tail between his legs, eyes wide with terror. He whimpered, backing away from the man, as if trying to escape into the shadows of the room. Emma's throat tightened as she saw the panic rise in his eyes, the same fear she had fought so hard to help him overcome. She had seen him grow from a dog who couldn't trust anyone to one who had found safety in her presence. But now, in the face of the man from his past, all of that progress seemed to unravel in an instant. "Max," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "It's okay, buddy, it's okay." But Max couldn't hear her words. His body was shaking, his breath ragged, and he cowered into a corner, too afraid to move, too afraid to come to her. Emma's heart ached. She could feel his terror in every inch of her being. The man's eyes narrowed. "He's not yours to keep. I'm taking him back," he sneered, stepping closer. Fear gripped Emma's chest, but something else burned within her, a fierce resolve. She couldn't let Max go back to the life he'd once known, the life that had broken him. Her mind raced, but her body refused to tremble. She stepped forward, blocking the man's path, the courage swelling in her chest. "You're not taking him," Emma said, her voice surprisingly steady, though her heart thundered in her ears. "He's not yours anymore." The man's laugh was bitter, taunting. "You think you can stop me? He's mine, and you're just some woman who thinks she can play the hero." The words stung, but Emma didn't flinch. She stood taller, her eyes locked with his. Every inch of her body was screaming to protect the dog who had found safety with her. Max was hers now, and she would fight for him with everything she had. She could feel the heat of the moment, the urgency, the need to act. There was no turning back now. Emma's decision was made. Max was not going anywhere. She wouldn't let him be torn away from her, not when they had built this fragile bond together. Max, trembling, watched Emma with wide eyes. His ears flicked, sensing something in the air, something different. As Emma held her ground, her posture strong, her eyes unwavering, Max's fear began to fade, replaced by something deeper, something protective. He took a slow step forward, his body still shaking but no longer in full retreat. Emma held her breath, watching as Max hesitated. And then, as if understanding the shift in her energy, Max stepped closer to the stranger, placing himself between Emma and the man, a low growl vibrating in his chest. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had never seen Max act like this before. The dog, who had once been afraid of his own shadow, was now standing tall, ready to defend her. The growl grew louder, more insistent, a clear warning. Emma reached down, gently placing her hand on Max's back. "Good boy, Max," she whispered. "You're safe here." Her words were simple, but the power behind them filled the room. Max's tail twitched, and his stance hardened, as if to say, "You're not taking me away from her. This is my home now." Emma quickly turned, grabbing her phone with trembling hands. Her mind raced. She needed backup, and fast. With shaking fingers, she dialed animal control, then the police. Her voice was tight, but she managed to explain the situation, the urgency in her words echoing her growing panic. "Please," Emma said, her voice breaking, "I need help. There's a man here trying to take my dog. He's dangerous." As she hung up, Emma turned to face the man again, her pulse pounding in her throat. The stranger's eyes burned with anger, and he took another step toward her. Max growled louder, his body low, ready to protect her at all costs. Emma's heart raced as she waited for help to arrive. Every second felt like an eternity. The man was not backing down, and Emma's fear for Max grew with every passing moment. But she refused to let her fear control her. She had made it this far, and she would not let him be torn away from her. The tension in the room was unbearable. Emma stood, her body tense but resolute, while Max positioned himself firmly between her and the man. His growls were constant now, the sound vibrating in the air like a warning. As the man took another step forward, Max bared his teeth, his eyes locked onto the man with a ferocity that made Emma's heart swell. "This is my home," Max seemed to say. "You will not hurt her." Emma felt a rush of gratitude and pride. Max wasn't just the dog she had rescued. He had become her protector, her unwavering companion. She could see the change in him. The dog who had once been afraid now stood strong, ready to defend her. The man faltered, hesitation creeping into his stance. Max's stance was clear. He was not backing down. Emma knew that she wasn't alone. Together, they could face whatever came next. The sound of sirens in the distance began to grow louder, signaling that help was on the way. Emma breathed a sigh of relief, but she never let her guard down. Max had shown her the depth of their bond, and in that moment, she knew they would face whatever came together. As the man begrudgingly steps back, a cold gust of wind sweeps through the open door, momentarily chilling Emma's spine. Her grip on the door tightens, her pulse racing, but before she can react further, the distant sound of sirens reaches her ears. The arrival of animal control feels like a blessing, like the calm after a storm. The man, now facing an official threat, scowls deeply, his hands balling into fists. But it's too late. The authorities are here. "Let's go," one of the officers commands with authority, his voice firm but calm, and the man grits his teeth in defeat. With one last furious glance at Emma and Max, he turns and storms off, muttering angrily under his breath. For Emma, the moment feels surreal. The man's departure feels like the lifting of an unbearable weight. Her heart, once hammering with fear and uncertainty, now beats with a sense of triumph and release. Max, beside her, looks up at her with newfound trust, his stance more assured now that the threat is gone. Emma breathes in deep, finally feeling safe. In the days that follow, Emma watches as Max undergoes a remarkable transformation. No longer the cowering, fearful dog that once trembled at every loud noise, Max now stands tall, his head held high. His eyes, once filled with uncertainty, now gleam with quiet confidence. Max's fur, once thin and matted, is now sleek and full, reflecting the care Emma has shown him. But it's more than just the physical changes that matter. It's his emotional growth. He no longer flinches when someone approaches him, no longer recoils in fear of being hurt. The bond between them has only deepened. Max's loyalty to Emma is unwavering. She's not just his rescuer anymore. She's his protector, his companion. Together, they've created a home where safety and trust reign. Max has found his place in this world, and it's by Emma's side. As the door closes behind the man, Emma leans against the wall, her breath finally coming in slow, steady intervals. Her heart feels light, almost weightless. The fear that had gripped her chest for so long slowly dissipates. Max, still by her side, looks up at her with eyes that now speak volumes: gratitude, trust, and love. She exhales a shaky breath. The nightmare is over. She's won. Not just the battle for Max's safety, but for her own peace of mind. She's fought hard to get here, and at this moment all that stress, all that uncertainty, seems to melt away. Emma's eyes brim with tears of joy, of release. The fight is over. Max is safe. She's safe. The past few weeks have been a whirlwind for Emma, emotionally, mentally, and physically. When she first took Max in, she was a woman full of fear, scars from the past, hesitant to let anyone get too close. But Max's silent devotion, his ability to trust her when she didn't trust herself, slowly began to change her. Now, as she looks at him, Emma realizes just how far she's come. Her walls, once built so high, so thick, and so strong, have started to crumble. The woman who feared vulnerability now finds solace in it. She has learned to trust again, not just in animals but in herself. Max's love has taught her that she is deserving of it, and his presence has reminded her that there's no shame in needing someone by your side. Emma smiles, her heart swelling with a newfound understanding. She has always been capable of love. She just needed to remember it. Looking back, Emma realizes just how much has changed. She remembers the fear and uncertainty that clouded her thoughts when she first saw Max shivering in the cold. But now, she doesn't see herself as a broken woman trying to fix a broken dog. She sees a partnership. She sees healing. Max and Emma, two souls who once suffered in isolation, have created something beautiful together. What started as an act of rescue has turned into something so much more. They have both healed in their own ways by simply being there for each other. Emma takes a deep breath, her heart calm and centered. She's no longer running from the past. She's standing strong, ready to face whatever the future may hold, with Max by her side. The snowflakes begin to fall gently again, coating the world in a quiet, serene blanket of white. Emma and Max step outside together, their footprints forming a small trail behind them in the snow. It's the same snowstorm that had once brought them together, but now it feels like a different world. Max walks by her side, his pace steady, his eyes filled with the same trust and loyalty he's shown her every day since that first terrifying moment. Emma smiles, her hand resting lightly on his back. For the first time in a long time, she feels at peace. The weight of the world no longer presses on her shoulders. She's not alone. As they walk through the snow, Emma feels the warmth of Max's presence beside her, his body a constant reassurance that they are no longer alone in the cold. The storm, once a symbol of fear, is now a reminder of the strength they've found in each other. Together they walk forward, side by side, no longer two broken beings, but two hearts that have mended, healed, and found their home in each other. It's often said that the greatest transformations happen when we give others, animals or humans, a second chance. Emma had learned this from Max, the once terrified dog who had now blossomed into a confident and loyal companion. Her act of rescue had not only saved his life, but, in turn, had given her the opportunity to rebuild hers. The power of second chances had proven to be more than just a lifeline. It was a pathway to healing. The bond between Emma and Max had healed them both. Emma had opened her heart again, allowing herself to trust, not just in Max, but in her ability to love. And Max, once fearful and broken, had learned to trust too. His love for Emma mirrored her own growing trust. Together, they had created something neither of them had expected, a home built on love and a promise of protection. It's funny how life works. Some of the strongest connections are formed in the most unexpected ways. When Emma had first found Max, she never imagined that a freezing, trembling dog would come to mean everything to her. But in the chaos of rescue, something extraordinary had unfolded. Max, with his soft brown eyes and gentle presence, had woven himself into her life, and in doing so, had shown Emma what it meant to truly heal. Their bond was unbreakable now, formed not through conventional means but through love that grew from shared pain and triumph. Small acts of compassion can have a profound impact. What started as Emma taking in a stray dog had turned into a life-altering experience for both of them. Max had saved her from isolation, and she had saved him from a life of fear and loneliness. Together, they had experienced how kindness, whether shown to a broken animal or to another person, could transform their lives, shaping them into stronger, better versions of themselves. The journey hadn't been easy. For both Emma and Max, fear had been a constant shadow, and it had taken courage for them to step beyond it. Emma had her own fears, of not being able to give enough, of loving too deeply, and of being hurt. Max had to learn to trust after a life full of uncertainty and neglect. But through their shared experiences, they had learned that embracing love meant embracing vulnerability. In doing so, they had found the courage to heal together, showing that it's only by overcoming our deepest fears that we can truly find peace and love. Emma's compassion towards Max had sparked more than just a bond between them. It had created a ripple effect. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, spreads outwards, influencing the world in ways we can't always see. By opening her heart to Max, Emma had inspired those around her to be more compassionate. In turn, the love she shared with Max had shown others that even in the darkest of times, there was always room for kindness and hope. Every loving gesture had the power to spark more good, creating a cycle of positivity that reached further than either of them had ever imagined.